Peter, we're live. My first party, the podcast.
The revolution has started turning.
Well, actually, I was thinking, I'll probably go ahead with the name My First Party.
Okay.
But I was tossing up as well, My First Revolution. But then a friend was saying, that's too extreme. That Donald Trump being in charge of the US
True.
now, we don't want to change that much.
No.
But
No, because
But as well, my first coup, I felt like, we could have the double entendre, like coup is in, like a victory, coup de grace. But then I wonder, will many people know of that? Will they just need a coup de
Well, everyone likes a good party anyway, so.
But yeah, I figured, if we say my first party, the double entendre of like, something to celebrate is, could be even sweeter with a political victory.
And look, most people are quite agnostic when it comes to politics anyway. It could be their first party too.
That's the point. But I figured, what we can hope to achieve is like, let's get everybody exposed to, like what the fusion party is about, the non-human party. I'm also part of the pirate party, by the way.
Which I did not know.
But it's not just. I don't want like another podcast where it's two idiots, their take on the latest happening in the week between Liberal and Labor.
No.
All the mainstream stuff gets talked about enough. Let's focus on the grassroots stuff. So let's
So it is focusing on the grassroots stuff.
Building a revolution.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Through a party.
Well, I mean that's what we have to do. I guess there's talk as well that people. There's a lot more love for independence recently, which is good that it sort of lowers the barrier to entry, could we say, if people can...
True, although I think without going into the details, I think what LNP and Labor, at least federally, have made it harder for independents coming in, but that's, I guess, been beyond the discussion right now.
Yeah, I guess the big goal of the podcast was to sort of reveal how poorly Liberal and Labor have been managing the country for decades and why we need change.
Yeah, exactly, which goes to your point, which maybe why I want to draw it back, why people are getting sort of disenfranchised and disengaged with and can see it for what it is. That having a horse race every 3-4 years to tell people you can bet on these two silks, this is what you've got, and at the end of the day, the horse race is pretty much predetermined anyway. You can see in the media who's going to win most years. And you say, well, what's in it for me?
It's curious. I saw after the recent election, there was some pictures of the Electoral Commission doing their voting. They have the scrutineers there. The AEC, they've written some caption about like, look, we're revealing this is a very transparent democratic process. And I made the comment that like the election result has largely been predetermined. Of course, all the online trolls attack me. For saying like, oh, you're making up conspiracy theories. Like, no, everybody knows that, when the media, even Wikipedia, like all these people, they pick far ahead of time. Like in my seat of Wills, for instance, they were saying this is going to be a contest between Peter Khalil from Labor and Samantha Ratnam from the Greens. And, they're saying this before many candidates have even nominated.
Well, it goes to, if you really want to make it even semi-competitive, get rid of preferential. Totally. Make it first past the post.
This would make it more competitive.
Yeah.
In
what way? As far as in politics, once people are elected, I'm not saying do that. So once it's elected, then people have to then compete to get policies through, right? Because at the moment, we already know there's two Labor Liberal. So now we're all dancing in the tune that is getting played by these two parties, like whether it's Democrat, Republican, Labor, Liberal, they call the songs and everyone just dances to this song now.
Yeah, like with the media being complicit with it,
And everyone just knows it's like either it's going to be Labor or Liberal and everyone else just sort of plays around in that song now.
Yeah.
So in order to really shake it up, you've got to disband it from the start, which is not going to happen. Because no one's ever going to cut their nose to spite their face.
But you're saying to shake it up more, we move
you'd have to
preferential.
You'd have to totally get rid of that. They do like they even do in Germany and other places, and have the people who they vote for in their region will have direct representation of that region. Where now, as you said, it's pretty much predetermined before the election even happens who's going to win.
I guess those are just like two slightly different things. When I was referring to the pre-decided outcome, it's because, unfortunately, so many people, probably well-meaning, they think they're just reporting on news. Like in Wikipedia, for instance, they say, I think they might have changed it slightly, but like you could go to the page like about wills, for instance, and it would have pictures of maybe like two candidates, and it would say like these are the candidates for the upcoming election, like the two favourite candidates sort of thing. And the vote hasn't happened yet. Why is Wikipedia making bets about who's going to win? Like, sure, we can refer to last election and say that Labor did well, but for Wikipedia, it's meant to be completely impartial. It's making bets about who the top two are going to be, and then the ABC in turn picks who the favourites are. Sports bet, and then so by the time the voters want to see what their options are, then
I was at the I was getting some blood tests recently, and I had two guys. I was going on the phone talking to another guy about placing bets about who was going to win.
Oh, like the
So so I agree with you. So I was being facetious about before about going down that political pathway. But it was about if you really wanted to shake the whole thing up. But right now, this is the system we've got, and therefore everyone's complicit in it.
I would say as well, like on a brighter note, one of the reasons we're chatting about making the podcast is, it's not just about chatting about, my favorite party, your favorite party, but we'll be meeting people from like other grassroots organizations, enemies even, because I like to keep an open mind. We've got to regularly question ourselves, like are our opinions actually correct? Do they stand up to?
100%. I think obviously you and I, we've recently met, so we obviously got different life experiences and different views and political consciousness as well. So I'm sure we'll, through our dialogues, learn different things as well. So definitely bringing different people, different thoughts as well.
Peter, I think you're more street smart than I am. I'm too naive and optimistic a bit.
Well, you probably see things a little bit, more less cynical. maybe we'll use that term.
I've heard that behind every cynic is a burnt-out idealist.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, and once you probably age adds a bit of that to it as well.
Yeah.
So get to the point you think, I think I've accumulated enough credits now where don't matter. Does it really matter if I put this can in that bin or that bin? I've kind of done enough sometimes. So
isn't it a shame that I guess like as we move towards many people want to have the circular economy, completely recycling everything. But unfortunately that seems a way off. Too many people, all the antisocial behaviour that goes on. It feels like society is always like teetering on a precipice. It's so hard to keep it falling away from chaos.
Yeah, look, everyone, and in particular, we all want to have our own little orthodoxy that makes us feel good about ourselves and our self-worth's driven by it. So even if it means I take the family at least twice a year to surfers and we go to Hawaii every third year. But I'm joking, I'm not me, but I'm very strict with everyone in our body corporate. They must recycle. I'm that person. It's like, right, but the walls you build to make yourself feel good, you don't really see beyond that.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I mean, there's a saying: a good fence makes good neighbours. But our body corporate loves fences.
Well, I wasn't being specific about this body corporate, Owen. But
I was. I forget if I think I might have floated the idea by you to all our listeners who might not have heard this before. But so what if there was like fusion body corporate? So the idea is people love their political parties, but they can't get enough of them. What if, sure, you can elect, Labor to be your federal representation, your state government and your local representation. But, we have elections for, like, in the US, they can elect their police officers, their sheriffs, they can elect their judges.
Yeah.
What if in Australia what if you could elect Labor to, run your building? The owners corporation always keep voting in their members of the committee. What if they could say, I'm your Labor-aligned member of the committee? Their skill set is fundamentally running a harmonious society. And I guess for many people, they would probably be outraged thinking, oh my goodness, a Labor person, a Liberal person running my building. And that should be a hint that maybe Liberal and Labor shouldn't be running anything in our country.
True. And how would, so they would have, like, again, just teasing that out, would this person, let's say, would have, bloody corporate building management skill sets, but be aligned to, as you say, a political affiliation?
Oh, it's more, so, how some of the owners, join the owners committee,
Correct.
and they appoint, like, the body corporate management company.
Yep.
So, like, maybe the management company would also be, like, aligned with Liberal Labor, but I'm saying mainly when the owner puts their hand up, like, I would like to join the committee, they would be saying, and I'll be following, the principles of the Labor Party, for instance. And so, like, we'll only be hiring union contractors to come to our building, and, like, we'll turn a blind eye if they happen to be bikies, for instance.
Okay. Well, my view on the body corporate thing now, that could work in different ways.
Oh, go on.
Where, because obviously the high density or medium density, whatever's going on now, so we could collectively form collectives in our local area of all the different body corporates.
Oh, yeah.
And then have a fusion of them, and then go to our local council and say, well, here we are, and amongst us there's 20 now, and we have
20 buildings,
we have a voting block now, and we want X, this part here to be made a park, we need this road done, whatever, we can't get through, and if you don't, you guys are out the next election.
It's actually
and then that expands to then say to Labor, whoever's running, say, if you guys don't do this, we're voting you guys out, we're putting these guys, and then it just expands from local, you build that, and then go into state, etc. So it becomes a base from below, based on individuals. So what does it mean for me? Because at the moment, all the political views are sort of pushed towards, yes, individuals' fears, as in immigration, X and whatever, real or unreal, it taps into people's fears. I'm suggesting go to what actually people really need and what does it mean for me, and that's the real life stuff.
Well, it's good you brought that up because one of the things I wanted to focus on for the podcast is like how people can not just join parties, maybe they don't want to, but how people can get more political power to change the world.
That's all it should be. And again, people have lost sight. As opposed to, again, tying it into our conversation, people join these committees in the body corporate to represent tenants. Politicians run for politics to represent the people.
Oh, that's ideally.
So I'm saying ideally, right? That's the role. So to get it back, you should be political because we all are, and these people just represent us to advocate as proxies. That's what it's meant to be.
Well, so we need to make sure that they don't lose sight of that.
We shouldn't be just advocating our, and be absolvent to that and say, and absolve all my responsibility. And whatever their decision, I'm not a politician. No, they just advocate for us. They're our proxy.
Yeah, it reminds me as well. I guess when we think of like the early days of democracy and like why it even exists, I think fundamentally, the people have a lot of power. And can you imagine like the angry mob shouting like, you better do as I say, otherwise we're going to depose you. And so like if you have a few mobs all shouting like, we want Tom.
Body corporate mobs.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, making sure that government aligns with them again.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. We draw it back to, but what does it mean for me? So as body corporate tenants, we take it back to, okay, I need this. I've got children here, we need X. I've got elderly people in our buildings, we need these things. So we take it back to that, then you build the principles around that, who we are in this local area. We need someone now who's going to represent us and our needs.
Yeah. I was thinking as well, actually, one of the segments we could have on the podcast is like inviting, regular civilians, is that the right word? To, people who haven't drunk the Kool-Aid yet.
Comrades,
yeah. So that, they can come on and, maybe we can like radicalize them. Because the idea is, many people think, when they think politics, they say, let's not talk religion or politics at the dinner table. And that idea of politics...
I didn't grow up at my house.
That idea of politics is very like US-centric, I guess, where like, these two parties locked in forever, they hate each other. And so like, why would you bring that up? You're not gonna solve like Israel-Palestine.
Just good vibes.
Yeah, but then another way of thinking about politics is that it's it's an agreed upon set of rules for ensuring harmony in our society.
Well, there was. That's even Athens and so forth was formed initially. So yeah.
Oh, can you elaborate?
Maybe not today, but
okay. But yeah, I guess when we were saying before about good fences and neighbours and that sort of thing, like I guess a way we can think about how to radicalise a civilian, if they can focus on like what aspects of your life bring harmony to you and the world around you. How can we double down on that? What aspects of society don't cause happiness? And same as Marie Kondo, we can throw them out. It's an oversimplified way of thinking about it, perhaps. I think actually Marie Kondo, I think I've been following her principles pretty well. I think.
Yes. Really.
You like throwing things out.
Have you actually put anything in here to throw out? It seems the same since I first came in.
Oh, some of the plants have died, unfortunately. I'm not sure if I should edit that part. But
as long as I weren't AI plants.
Yeah, I got a lot of critique about the website for Fusion Party. I made that, and yeah, there's a lot of AI art. Yeah, unfortunately, lots of hate mail coming in.
Why? What aspect?
Oh, a common complaint about AI art is that we're stealing jobs from artists. We should have commissioned an artist to make the stock photos instead.
Okay.
Are you a fan of AI art?
Yeah, I like any art. Art, if it appeals to me and it, makes some emotion, then I like it. I like anything. I like cinema. Bias towards it.
Actually, on the topic of hiring someone, so one of our neighbours actually, Sharon, her dog died, and she commissioned.
Is she on the ground?
Yeah. She commissioned a picture to be made, a dog with like wings and stuff. It looks a lot like AI, but yeah, she hired someone to make that.
Painting.
Yeah. I mean, it looks a bit like a painting.
Yeah.
But what would the people sending me hate mail? What would they think about that? Sharon did the good thing. She hired someone, and then that person used AI art. So doesn't that make AI art acceptable?
Yeah. Again, it goes back to the other point I made before about the sort of anecdote where I said people fly all over the world and do stuff, but be adamant about making sure you recycle in the same bin. And so really, that's the one thing you're going to focus on. Look at the rest of your life and how we treat people and everyone else and your behaviours, and then talk to other people on that immaterial matter.
Yeah, the paper straws reminds me of that as well.
Yeah.
Why not just get rid of the straws? That's what
exactly.
We used to.
That's the whole recycling thing. Is like, okay, you want the whole world, every person in the world, if we did everything that the recycling sort of corporations tell us and governments tell us we have to do, and let's say we all did it, that's fine. But I'll tell you what, if every corporation that pollutes did their bit, it would be far more than what we all as individuals could do.
Actually, on that point, have you heard about the conspiracy about the recycling, all the ads and that?
As far as what the chemical company.
Oh, so many of our viewers might not be aware, but so there's an iconic ad from I think the 1970s. It's called "The Crying Indian," Native American. But yeah, so this guy is like walking along the side of a highway for a relaxing walk, and then
I think I know this one.
the people driving by, they toss some garbage out the window, and then he starts crying. Look what these hoodlums are doing to my precious nature, and
Mother Earth kind of thing.
Yeah, and then the message is like, tisk, you should be recycling. And so this was paid for by some sort of non-profit company, like Americans for Nature or something like that. But that charity was funded by Coca-Cola, by all these
the plastic producing companies.
Yeah, and so they wanted to create this mindset where it's only garbage once you decide to.
So the guilt was transferred over to the consumers,
exactly,
the producers.
And so this stuff continues.
100%. We were made to feel guilty for the products that they were producing, and we then, even as taxpayers, have to fund for the disposal of. It's the best Stockholm syndrome relationship we've had as consumers.
It
started with petrol. Petrol produced the plastics, They then sell us the plastics, and then we have to keep buying the stuff, stay in that petrol industry, and also now feel guilty for the waste.
Oh, actually, on that point, a kind of example. So this, I agree that, like Coca-Cola, for instance, is being less moral than they could. But for the petrol, for instance, I think the consumers are a lot more guilty than they give themselves credit for. And so you see all these stats thrown around, like these 10 companies are responsible for 80% of emissions. And companies like the Saudi Aramco, BP, ExxonMobil, and so the people posting this, the vibe is that we should crack down on these billionaires and the CEOs. It's like, no, you buy the petrol yourself. You vote for governments that give out fossil fuel subsidies, and then you're saying, oh, it's all BP's fault. And you're filling up at the Bowser every week.
Oh, I get that. One of the points you made there is the most valid one, and that is that we keep electing the governments that fund this perpetual need for the oil and the system that we have. Because the one true thing in politics is that you always get the government you deserve. And so, in all of that, the fact that we're still relying on oil primarily and everything, that's beyond my individual control. But the fact that we keep, as I said, it's a Stockholm syndrome thing that we rely on the systems, these corrupt governments that we have. Yes, it is our fault.
Yeah, but I guess the simplest change we can make, when people think about, if they're going to give up their car, that's quite difficult for many people. But, changing your vote makes...
No, giving up the car is what they want you to do as part of the guilt thing. It goes back to that point. If you want things to change, you have to be political and say, you're representing me, and that's not how I want the world to be going.
Yeah, it's, I guess, like different parties can help get rid of cars more easily.
Oh, it's not about getting rid of cars. You're talking about the end product.
Well, hang on, but you're saying someone is going to feel guilty. No. At the end of the day, like a sin is being committed, isn't it?
No, it's not about feeling guilty about, they shifted the guilt of who's responsible, say, for the waste. So recycling, the petrol companies who produce the plastics and so forth, instead of them disposing of them, finding ways of disposing of it, they shifted the recycling guilt onto us. That you're responsible for it now, you need to be managing the waste. That was the guilt that they put on us as part of advertising over generations now. As far as us stopping to use cars, me stopping to use my cars doesn't make a big issue. But if we change our political system here and what we want, that will have material impact. So we have to start thinking differently about the future, like even
high-speed rail.
High-speed rail, innovation, technology, everything. But you remember, it wasn't 2 elections ago when the Labor government, they brought forward subsidies for electric vehicles, and it was the Morrison government at the time, if I'm not mistaken, was lampooned by saying you're going to lose your utes.
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
So as basic as that argument, that's how much intellectually we challenged that conversation. They were saying, we're going to go down a path of introducing more electric vehicles, etc., and the government that won lampooned it by saying, guys, you're going to lose your utes.
Yeah, I remember that.
So it doesn't get beyond that. So unless we change the people who represent us and make these decisions, we can all try and reduce our cars. It's not going to make a difference. Material.
Yeah. On that note, many people, you look at the Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil. They like to, they don't want to wait for elections. They get out, start blocking traffic, things. It's I feel that those protests are justified.
No, I've no issue with because in order to create real change, even at work, if you're implementing change, you have to create tension. No change ever really sticks. Even if you don't complete it fully, you only get it to a 60% mark, you'll never go back to the start. But in order to generate it, you have to create some tension. And to create social tension, you need that.
Nobody ever got more rights by asking for life.
100%. And even those that are lauded the ones that are celebrated as the civil rights leaders, that's great. But there were people before them that really did some of the hard stuff and died, etc., to get to that point. So,
well, I hope I don't get cancelled, but it's not common knowledge that Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was a terrorist.
well, of course he was, according to the government of the day, yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, maybe according to anyone, he was planting bombs for political causes.
Well, of course he was. That's what I'm saying. According to the government of the day, he was campaigning for his own freedom rights and how he saw them.
Oh, I should just clarify. What you're saying now is like a common pushback, where I'm using the term terrorist just objectively. He planted bombs for political endeavors, and so many people, they like to, if they like Nelson Mandela, they'll try to say that he wasn't a terrorist because terrorism is inherently bad in their eyes. What I'm trying to say is that like one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Yeah, that's why I was using that statement to say, according to the government of the day, they would label it as something bad, where for him and his cause and people, he was doing something good. So again, it's just the one true statement in any life or psychology is that the eyes only see what the mind is capable of comprehending. So we can try and view it objectively and say, for how he was living oppressed, he was fighting for what he needed. There was a means to an end. And as far as if you're a white, Boer, trying to preserve your land and privilege and everything else that went with it, you were like, we've got to stop this guerrilla warfare that's going on. It's common. That's how it plays out.
Although on a brighter note, one of my favourite revolutions is the bloodless coup, the bloodless revolution, where King James I was deposed by William of Orange. The Glorious Revolution, that's the name I was looking for. But yeah, so the idea was King James I declared that Parliament was going to be dissolved, he was going to rule by decree, and all these people were outraged. And so William of Orange, his nephew, he was essentially the ruler of the Netherlands at the time. And so all these people organised for him to invade England. And once he landed, these people were waiting for him in eager anticipation. And so King James saw like, oh shit, things aren't in my favour. And that's why they call it the Bloodless Revolution, because he could read the writing on the wall and left. And it was a great victory where the people, their will overpowered the king. And so from now on, the French Revolution was obviously like a great step in that direction as well. Showing that the people have the power, and that the only way rulers can have any legitimacy is if they pretend, or if they do indeed get the will of the people. And so you see, regularly, like, dictators, quote unquote, now, they'll still hold elections. They'll get, 90% of the votes. But
I'm Russian, and Putin is now God. So if that's a smite on the Lord and Saviour, please drink your tea. Keep drinking.
But you'll see, like, they don't have to host. They don't need these elections, but it gives them so much legitimacy to be able to say, look, I
have a mandate.
Exactly.
And I won't go and grind it because I can date anyone I want.
Yeah. I didn't realise, but there are rumours about Peter being that he's married to the state, isn't he?
Yes.
So I wonder.
There was a lot of shirtless horse riding with Putin. If you Google him, it's like he does like to go bareback. Is that the term?
Yeah. But actually, on that note, I wonder. Remember Julia Gillard? She got criticised because she was quote unquote barren. She didn't have children.
Really?
And so.
Well, yet.
Oh. How old was she?
Oh, okay, come on. It's not for us to make these stuff. Now you're going to get cancelled. Now, you can criticise a freedom fighter, but you cannot. I should not be telling you these things about women being barren and when they can't.
I was quoting Tony Abbott.
Well, okay, fair. That is fair.
But
The onion muncher.
I forget. I'm pretty sure I did the quote unquote.
You did. I saw your fingers do it.
It's I gotta be mindful. Some people will only be listening to Spotify or whatever. But yeah, what would
quotation marks first thing. I corroborate.
But what would you say? If someone like in their 40s who's single was to run, would that be seen as a bad thing?
Stretch, but for what, politics?
Yeah, like
male
in
or
Australia.
female?
Well, yeah, I think if you're female and single in like your 50s, I think that would be seen as, you might get called like a cat lady.
True, a Karen-esque.
Yeah,
maybe.
I feel like the public probably would be softer on them.
But yes, well, yeah, they do. Like, the great guy that's come back from the Lazarus out in the...
Julian Assange?
No.
I know he in South Melbourne.
Yeah.
Josh Frydenberg.
No, the other...
Tim Wilson.
Tim Wilson, he's come back.
He's not single, he's got a husband.
Does he?
Yeah.
Damn.
He,
I thought...
Yeah.
I
don't know if they're still together, probably. But because I remember he proposed in Parliament.
Did he?
Yeah. And the guy said yes in Parliament as well. Oh, he was in the rafters. But then,
there you go.
Yeah. It's lots of stuff happens. I'm surprised they don't get more people shouting and yelling. Do they just cover that up if people start protesting?
Protesting for what? That is no now.
No. Well, maybe. Meant to be me. But no, like all the protests at Parliament. Because I'm thinking there was one back in the US actually. Some people came into their Parliament essentially in the viewing gallery and they started shooting. This was for Puerto Rican independence back in I think the 60s maybe.
Okay.
It's it's curious when obviously this election I was getting lots of emails about Palestine and
what's going on
there? There was amongst the various demands, one of them they were demanding freedom of speech, which I very much endorse. Because like they want the right to protest. They want to protest about Palestine, so they want freedom of speech. And actually, let's put a pin in that, by the way. But one of the other demands they wanted was like you must stand up for justice, like any events in the world, sort of thing. And I thought, like, well, yeah, sure, I'm prepared to do that, but but is that what you're doing? Because I mean, I think of conflicts like many Australians, many Americans as well would be unaware that Puerto Rico has been totally mistreated ever since at least as far back as since it's been in US hands. And so there have been multiple attempts to have liberation for Puerto Rico that have been violently suppressed. And even I'm sure many Australians, many Americans would be unaware that people who live in Puerto Rico are actually US citizens. That seems to be like a surprising fact for people. But yeah, so you think of Puerto Rico, you think of like West Papua, they're fighting for independence. All the various wars happening in Africa,
What was your response to this person that said you must fight for every cause?
So to a few of those people, I pointed out that there are all these like I don't know, maybe like 100 of this level.
I'd be imagining that if a cause was brought to your attention, they would be expecting you to say, I give them equitable, yes. Like I don't say, I don't know. Like for instance, if I'm of Greek heritage and Greece did something all of a sudden, I'd be saying, I'm going to turn a blind eye to that. I don't know. And have a bias. Maybe that's the way without being personal.
Yeah. Oh no, but I would want to, I would want to ensure that Australia's being a good citizen.
Yeah.
And it's something came up actually. There was the refugee forum I went to recently. So they would, we were talking about refugee rights and what should be done. Some of it was like very specific policies. There was this thing about like fast track, for instance, where there was such a backlog of refugees that they decided like this is taking too long. Instead of the regular court case, let's just do the fast track. Let's give them one chance at court, no right to appeal, And so, I was making the point that how can we have this inadequate justice system that can't keep up and, will temporarily take away these people's rights? We saw during COVID that, when we temporarily take people's rights away, it ends up being not so temporary after all. And that the solution to these various refugee policies, instead of, hyper-specific band-aids essentially, which is what I felt Labor was proposing, we can take a step back or, look at it from what's the root cause here. And to me, the root cause is we have an inadequate justice system. And
staffing-wise?
Well, procedurally as well. And that also Australia is just regularly a bad global citizen. And so, remember during when ISIS was at its heyday, there were various Australians who were suspected of fighting for ISIS. And if they were dual citizens, they had their Australian citizenship revoked. It's now someone else's problem to deal with these ISIS fighters. And so we saw during this election campaign, the Liberal Party was proposing, let's have a referendum. Should we be able to cancel dual citizenship to citizenship? That's 30% of people in Australia are dual citizens with Australia and somewhere else. And, I would be against this proposal because these people would always be second-class citizens if at any time.
Totally.
Yeah, but
it's just reactionary policy, and it's not. So it's just tapping into a fundamental essence of Australia, and that's racism. That's all it is, and it's worked for large periods of Australia's history, and at least the LNP's won some elections in the last 15 years off it, kids overboard and so forth.
I was thinking that one as well.
It's worked and works, and they did try it even in this election to try and.
Oh, well, what was that?
Again with the immigration issue and stuff. Protect our borders. It's an easy draw card, but it didn't quite get the score that they were hoping for. So it's something that is easily tapped into aspects of this country for a long time.
Yeah, actually it reminds me, I guess, One Nation is the party that's most associated with racism, that sort of thing. I saw on the news today, actually, I can't remember her name, but anyway, she was elected in South Australia for One Nation, and she's already defected to become independent. And the reason she gave was that there were irrecoverable brand problems with One Nation. And I mean,
well, it's true.
Well, there might be, but the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? She was elected as a One Nation candidate, so obviously it's not irrecoverable, is it?
well, whether it's irrecoverable or not, everyone
insurmountable.
Whether it is or not, everyone knows that's what you represent.
Oh,
allegedly.
Well, I mean, now she's just been outed as just a complete liar.
Yeah, that's my point, but that's what you ran on. That's allegedly your value. And that's what you value. So just because now you have changed your brand, your value was that. So if you're now telling us your values have changed, now it's a question of integrity. So either way, you're out.
Yeah. Actually, on that point, I would like to bring up voters themselves. One of the things, one of the purposes of the podcast is obviously to get information out about these minor parties, these small movements, grassroots movements, I prefer to say. But
grassroots movements.
Yeah, because it's growing. Yeah. But then if we think about the voters who, someone who's voting, Animal Justice Party, for instance. What's a better example? I guess Fusion is perhaps a better example. The voters that, especially the people who become party members, whenever they come to us, they often say that, I hadn't heard of you before. Now that I've heard of you, I agree with you. It's rare that they say, you used to be shit, but then you changed this policy and that policy, and so now I'm aligned with you. And so I find it a shame that, the voters, they're not changing their minds often when they come to minor parties. They're not, they're just being exposed to these ideas and realising that there was a lot they were missing out on. It's
I think it goes back to what I was saying before about, I was talking about, the fusion of body corporates, right? Because it goes back to the essence of appealing to the individual. What does it mean for me? So unless the message resonates with someone, whatever that message is, that, that means something to me, resonates to me, then they won't get engaged, right? So back to your point, why haven't they heard about your, let's say, policies?
Oh, they're not putting the time to research, are they?
It's clearly their fault, right? So.
Oh, but to be fair, many of these parties could be more interesting as well.
Yeah, but again, I'm being facetious. Yeah. So it's about how does that message hit the people that need to know that stuff. So is it just scattered too broad and not far enough? How does it get to the right target audience? Going back to that point about branding. What is the branding? And when people see it, it's like, it's not really my thing. And it just turns them off straight away.
There was
as opposed to, okay, that are interesting points, what does it mean? And delve further.
Yeah, actually on the note of branding, there was someone at the election booth that was wearing a pink suit. This woman said, "Oh, I'm not going to vote for you because you're wearing that." I said, "But don't you want climate action? Don't you want universal basic income?" "Oh yeah, but you can't wear that." It can't make these people happy.
Well, that's the thing. That's the point. You got to. Unfortunately, it is about branding. It's to draw the people in, and then it's like, okay, now I've got your attention. It's like that whole thing, sex.
Oh,
now that I've got your attention.
We'll remember the sex party, yeah. But then, Fiona Patten, I don't know if all the viewers are aware, but Fiona Patten, I'm pretty sure she was one of the founders of the sex party, yeah. And then they changed their name later to Reason because they felt that enough of their, the government was basically being proved in a lot of their laws, and so once enough had changed, they felt like, well, that job's sort of done, so let's change it to Reason. I mean, if the government acted with a bit more reason, that would be good. But now, Reason has collapsed, and now Fiona Patten, she was the Senate candidate for Victoria for legalised cannabis.
Yeah,
she might get in.
Really?
I think the voting hasn't finished yet. Last I checked.
Okay.
And so.
Yeah, I had a chat with her as well.
Yeah, she's very switched on. I hope she does well. But funnily enough, many people keep mistaking that fusion is somehow connected to Reason. I guess, when we're just saying about branding, I guess we have to make.
Well, that's the point. Those who then come to you and say, "Oh, I agree," but I was ambivalent because I thought you were linked to Reason.
I would say we have a lot in common.
No, I'm kidding.
Actually, drug legalisation, drug decriminalisation, that's a big thing we have in common. Same as legalised cannabis. But actually, I was mentioning before about freedom of speech when we were saying about the refugees and that. Funnily enough, I find that the Fusion Party seems to be the only left-wing party that cares at all about freedom of speech. And so I saw there was this disinformation bill that came up about a year ago. It was started by the Liberal Party and then continued with Labor. And the Greens voted against it. And so I figured isn't this nice? They support freedom of speech. But then I was reading online why they were against it. They never mentioned the term freedom of speech. They were talking about how it doesn't adequately address the profit models of Facebook and Google. And so you see as well, lots of the Socialist Alliance, many of the left-wing parties, their theory about how to govern the world, they love saying everything is the fault of billionaires and their companies, and that we just got to tax them all, we just got to break up their monopolies and everything, then we live in harmony. I feel coming in with a big hammer to fix everything. I much prefer the approach of let's see the underlying problems behind if we say, for instance, that Facebook is harmful, I would want to focus on what are the underlying
but going back to those laws that they brought in, that was more to protect local content of the Murdoch. That had nothing to do with Facebook and anything else, because local government here, being LNP or Labor, that's why they're both advocating for it, because
that's right.
They went against the Murdoch press here at the time. The government was screwed, right? So Murdoch needed, and Fairfax, etc., needed their local content protected here. So the government here said to basically Facebook and etc., no, you need to pay these guys, etc. And Facebook was going, why? And they're like, oh, because our bosses are telling us this, as in Mr. Murdoch's telling us this. That was the issue. It had nothing to do with freedom of speech.
Oh, but I remember for the misinformation, one of the things was, like their chosen news organisations were like trusted sources of true information.
Yeah. That's all it was. That's all it was, protecting the basically business model and revenue business model of the Murdoch Fairfax, which basically tell our government of the day who's going to win. And if you don't do what we say, well, obviously Sky News has lost a little bit of credibility now. But going back to when those laws were pushed in, you're talking about like COVID period and stuff. So, it had nothing to do with freedom of speech. That's just going back to a discussion we had earlier about my question I always ask myself is, to what end? Yeah, I see the legislation. I see why you're doing it, but why?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's what I was trying to get at before about, Fusion's approach is like, we really want to focus on the root causes, and same as, I guess, like housing affordability is probably a better example. I was the main author of our housing policy. It could probably be an episode in itself, so I won't go into too much detail now. But the policies I came up with, it not only makes housing more accessible, it also changes the incentives for government infrastructure projects. We could finally have high-speed rail, which would be nice. You saw...
Well, we do have government housing policies, like they do it for defence housing.
Yeah.
So they do it, they used to do it, they still do it.
Yeah.
It's just, again, when you've got Lend-Lease and everyone else sort of lobbying and that they dictate how policy is written, that's the outcomes we have.
I've seen actually defence is like the sort of test bed for many, giving rights to soldiers is often like the first step, giving rights to other people. So for Medicare, for instance, I was reading that veterans from World War II, when they came back, they were missing limbs, etc. And so they needed more medical care, more payments, etc.
There's nothing like putting a gun to the head of politicians to force them to make the right decision. So we get back to the revolution.
I guess, that's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then as well, there's the main aspect is like veterans are very much glorified. Whether or not they should be, that's a debate for another day. But well, let's just say they have currency when it comes to what should be done. Yeah, and so all these people are saying like these veterans are being mistreated, these veterans need care. We better give them, essentially care.
They were mistreated, now give them care.
Yes. Yeah. And so once that caught on, the rest of the public thought, hey, that looks great, I want some of that too. And that's the story I've heard about how Medicare was born. So, I guess many people might not be familiar with the defence housing, but basically, the government buys land, buys homes, and then rents it out at affordable, subsidised rates to the soldiers. And later when they sell it off, they make a profit. It's a money making endeavour.
And it can be done, and it was done in the past, and it can be done. But we privatise everything.
Yeah, actually, let's leave that to the housing episode. Actually, Peter, let's discuss. So, what can people expect future episodes?
I think we touched on before. We said try and bring some friendly faces in, and perhaps some that will cause some good dialogue and debate as well. Maybe we might even go on the road. A bit of a...
Because I guess Brunswick is a bit of a filter bubble.
Who knows? Maybe do an Owen's corner.
I really want to get opinions from like people who aren't in filter bubbles, or at least different filter bubbles to me. As well, I was floating the idea, what if we get children on? They're completely uncorrupted. So I was at a forum recently at a high school. These people can study politics when they're 16, 17 years old. And the questions they were asking were much more switched on than many of the adults. And actually, curiously, one of the questions they were saying, when we graduate from high school and we're wanting to start going into university, everything seems so expensive, university fees, cars, the cost of living, apartments, that sort of thing. What are you all candidates going to do to make sure that we can live in an affordable society once we graduate, or coming up to that time? And, I think the Greens were, their plans are pretty well known. But then my answer was to make it more affordable for these children. we should lower the voting age to 16.
Get some skin in the game.
Exactly. Once these people can vote, then suddenly the politicians got to think like, oh shit, what are we going to do?
The voting block changes.
And these kids were switched on. So the common argument like, oh, these people don't know what they're doing or make stupid choices. Adults make a few questionable choices.
It's not even that. I think the younger people were more, I don't say just radical, but they also get active in their lives as well. Some often do.
Yeah. So anyway, so I've reached out. Hopefully we'll get some,
that'll be good.
Intriguing children shows.
Goes back to open to new ideas as well, and I'm sure we'll learn some stuff as well. Technologically.
I am looking forward to that. Well, that's why I was planning on having lots of guests because I don't have all the answers. And so it would be great to hear my things, but academics would be good as well. Like policy debates here.
Yeah, no, I'm interested also get maybe a couple of some of our local, I guess, more experienced politicians in, just to really glean from them why and they're in it.
But
and understanding what drives them as well. I'm curious. I know a couple have been in it for a long time. So I'm interested to understand what they're driving for.
Yeah, and hopefully the listeners across the series, it can expose them to like the power that they have at their hands. Get a bit of insight what everyone else is doing and how our listeners might like to get more involved themselves in improving society.
Absolutely, it's our society.
Okay, good chatting, Peter.
Thank you, Owen.